Hey guys, so we're going to do this another one of these quick cutout and color corrections. So I've got a couple of photos that I could choose for soccer here, so I'm probably going to choose this one right here. Now this, if I were to drop this in, you find that this picture is only about 1,920 pixels across. It is not a gigantic photo. Whereas this photo here is about 3,000 pixels across. So if I wanted this person to kind of fill up the screen, it really wouldn't work because it would be too small. But what we can do is we can simply resize this picture once we put it into Photoshop, and we'll do that in just a second here. So let's go ahead and cut this guy out. So I'm going to do a couple different things here. So first off, I'm going to take my elliptical marquee tool, and I'm just going to kind of make a little circle around this ball. Let me see if I can't. A little bit here, and as you get your marquee tool here, what you can do is you can actually just grab it and move it around, and then you can right click on it and you can say transform selection, and you can sort of drag it up and drag it down, and maybe drag it up on this side too. Right, that's good. Okay, and so with that done, I'm going to get my magnetic lasso tool, apply this transformations, and I make sure it's set to add selection. So I can just sort of go through here and just sort of cut this out and add to the selection. So I'm going to be clicking along as I go, and I'm going to see if I can't get this exactly as possible. Obviously, the better this part is, the easier the rest will be. Okay, so we've got this kind of initially cut out. Now I can't iterate enough that it's always fastest to clean this up with the pen tool. So let's grab our pen tool, P on the keyboard, or we could just click this button over here, right? And I'll just quickly run through these and see if I can zoom in a little closer to get these well made out here. And remember, when you make your path, what you can do is you can make your path initially and just grab the control button and just sort of put these right. So I'll make selection, make sure you're adding to the selection for things that need to be added, for things you want to be included. Okay. And this little area right here, I can just make selection and subtract from selection, places that you don't want to be added on there. If it's inside a little bit, that's fine, because we don't want any of the background information sort of added on there. But just make sure that you don't have any egregious spots. So this right here is a little spot here that doesn't need to be there. Obviously, you can speed through this if you want. Wispy hairs like this up here, you could probably just leave out. But you just want to have like the bulk of what's happening here. I don't want this. This is sort of jagged over this way, so I don't want to have any of that. So this right here, normally I'd be okay with that little bit of green not being there, but it kind of cuts into the neck, so I definitely don't want that to be there. Definitely don't want that little gouge there. Oh, that's right here. And the only time you want to use your quick mask is if you've got something that's hard to select, you know, like a very irregular path. I'll just subtract this. So over here, I might just get my quick mask up just because it might be easier just to get my brush tool and shrink it down just enough to kind of like click on these things. So make sure this is a bit harder. I don't want this to be feathered. So just a little bit at a time. You don't want to try to take out huge swaths of the background with the quick mask tool here. So back to here, I'm going to go back to my path so I can just really easily just go right along the leg. Make selection, subtract from selection. Add selection. Okay. It's right here, long line, kind of along his leg, because it kind of got caught on that white stripe instead of the black stripe. Obviously, the more time you spend on this, the better it'll be. But you also want to be realistic about time constraints as well. Just about got it. All right, we'll call that good. And once again, we just get our Marquee tool here, and then we right-click on it, and we say Layer via Copy, and we have our cutout there. And let's take a look. I think that's basically good. All right, so then what we'll do is we will grab this picture here, find it in the File Explorer, and we'll just right-click on it, Open With, Photoshop. Now, if I were just to drop this in here, you can see it's going to be just, I mean, that's actually not bad. But if I wanted to take up like most of the, if I wanted him to take up most of the space here, what I would need to do is I would need to shrink this down a little bit. So for instance, I could go to Image, Image Size, and then from here where it says Originals, let me just click on Pixels, and let me just put like maybe 2,000 instead of 3,000. So that way it'll be a little bit smaller, and so when I drag him in, he's going to take up more of the screen, and I won't have to scale him up in order to have him be high resolution. Keep him high resolution. Okay, so well, let's go ahead and unlock the background layer here, and with the background layer selected, I'm going to reduce the saturation a little bit because the saturation is a little bit less on this one. This is very brightly colored, so I'm going to go ahead and go to. Actually, I'll keep this a smart object here. Let me just edit, undo, make layer. Yeah, and I'll just add a hue saturation adjustment layer here, and I'll take the saturation down some. And what's great about this is that when we do this, and I'll take the lightness down a little bit too. When we do something like this, we can get a good kind of view as far as what's happening. We can kind of adjust this in real time as long as we're selecting on this layer here. It's really good. The saturation being down a little bit and the lightness being down a little bit here too. I don't want it to be too bright. And we'll do the same thing we did before. I'll convert this to a smart object. And we'll make an adjustment layer for our curves. And I'm going to make sure this is a clipping mask by holding on the Alt key and clicking here. And make sure I click on the actual curves right there and hold down Alt and click on Auto. And let's go ahead and click on Find Dark and Light Colors. And we'll just grab the dark colors here with like the dark blue. And we'll find the midtones by maybe clicking on this, maybe like light gray here, mid gray right there, and then for the highlights we'll click on this blue up this way, right? And maybe even the midtones could be like this sort of whitish color here. Okay, and then I'll press OK, and then yes, and then once again we'll just set this to like, say for instance, soft lights, maybe not soft light, maybe multiply, and we can sort of adjust the opacity to fit what we're looking for here. And so that looks like, this might not fit necessarily with the scale, but it does sort of put them in the right spot here. One last thing we could probably do is we can add a new layer here, and let's just sample a color from somewhere in here, maybe like say for instance that one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this up. I'm going to get my bucket tool here, and I'm going to fill up this whole layer behind him with this color. Maybe not necessarily this color here, but I'm going to pull the opacity down to like say 21%, maybe 10%. And let's actually just make an adjustment layer here. Let's make it hue saturation and make sure there's a clipping mask on this one. And we can sort of mess around with the hue here to see what kind of color temperature works. Oh, I'll pull up the saturation too. Maybe make this a little bit. Oh, here we go. Hue. You can kind of see, I pull this opacity up a little bit here. And again, sort of like see what kind of temperature we're working with here as it goes. I like this. Probably pull the opacity down a little bit more. And maybe instead of this, let me just get rid of this. I'm just going to disable this. Thing. And I'll just go up here to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and we'll see about changing the hue a little bit. This is a bit too gray for it to really work. Let me try this again. I'm going to See if we can get this more blue. There we go. That's good. I like that better. That's better. Okay, sort of a dark blue. All right, cool. All right, and so this is a good example of adjusting both the foreground and the background in order to make things fit. Once again, we want to make sure that the foreground is bigger in its root form than the background, so we don't have to scale it up. Every time we scale up a drawing or any kind of raster image inside Photoshop, it's going to have the danger of becoming pixelated. So make sure whenever you're doing these things that you always make sure you know how big your foreground is going to be and how big your background is going to be. All right, well, can't wait to see you guys produce. See you in class.